Good evening, everybody. I realize we have people joining here from different time zones. So it's morning, afternoon. Greetings to everybody. I wasn't feeling well at all today, but show up is my second name. So despite all the technical glitches, apologies for the delay. But here we are. The topic for today is as Omar might have already shared, the art of unbiased coaching. Um, so, to begin with, I'd like you to imagine that you're standing at the edge of a vast forest and it's dark and misty. And every step that you take forward is influenced by what you can or cannot see. Similarly, biases, even though we cannot see them, but they affect us profoundly at a very deep level. As coaches, we are supposed to illuminate the path for others uh, and actually navigate the forest of challenges with them. But how can we do that if we ourselves are blinded by the fog? So, in order to help them navigate their fog, get them to clarity, we need to be clear ourselves. We need to bring in that unbiased lens. And for that, I would like to invite you to deep dive with me today on the biases that keep operating within our heads at an unconscious and sometimes at a conscious level. So I'm going to, and do please bear with me. As I shared, I've not been well. It's a new laptop. Uh, Thank you, Ms. Shaista. Lovely to have you here in the morning. And this isn't my laptop, so do bear with me. And please feel free to ask any questions, interrupt me at any moment. I'll try to keep myself brief and skip right to the content instead of any introductions. Perhaps we can do them later on because I realize your time is precious. So what are biases? Do share your thoughts in the chats. I'm sure a lot of you here are very experienced coaches and may know much more than me when it comes to biases. And some people are new to coaching, so some things will be a learning curve for them. Biases, the word was actually originated from French, where it was used to depict a slant line or a deviation. And similarly, uh, in, in today's world, it's now used to indicate the slant or the deviation from rational and logical thinking when it comes to decision making and judgments. Its roots lie in beliefs, emotions, or social contexts that we come from. They are about over 200 biases, but for today's session, we'll just be covering a few cognitive biases, social biases, affective, implicit biases. Each one has a huge category as well, but we won't be delving into too much detail. I'd like to keep it simple for you. Yes. So, uh, with ICF as well, the one thing that we're again and again reminded, and those of you who have taken the CK or the IC as it's now called, must have realized that the worst answers are the most tricky because we have so many unconscious biases that are operating that we find it really difficult to navigate through those. And that's a real test of, how aware are we of the biases that we hold. For instance, confirmation bias is when in an initial assessment, if you're in a coaching conversation with a client and you see them as very motivated, so you will uh, in all consequent conversations, you will tend to pick on this thing that they are highly motivated. And you might overlook other aspects where they might be struggling or aspects they might need more help in. An anchoring bias is like relying on the first piece of information that you get. Um, it could be like, for instance, the first piece of information. Do I have some comment or question? We can influence our behaviors, of course. Yes. Yes, Samir. So, anchoring bias again is relying on the first piece of information and then looking for all the information around us that validates that initial belief. Availability heuristic. This is something I'd like to share more about. I recently faced this while coaching people in a sales team. They were all coming from the same organization. So obviously the context was the same. From my first session with one of the team members, I realized that they were struggling with time management. And so the next session, um, I automatically assumed that since this person is in the same organization, relatively similar job description, so they might be struggling with time management as well. But we as coaches need to focus on each session individually and each person individually rather than um, generalizing that perhaps this person, this is how coaching is more beautiful and different from training, that it does see people as they are, as individuals. So we coach the person. And overconfidence bias is when generally you feel that I have been a leadership or an executive coach for 20, 30 years. And I'm sure some of you, I would like to hear from you by the end of the session, those who have 20, 30 years of experience in executive coaching. Does it ever come to you that when you get a new client, a new executive or a new leader, you might think for a moment that they might have similar struggles. What could be really different? The challenges are somewhat the same. So that overconfidence comes from us being so experienced in doing one thing, and that may actually end up in us overlooking what that particular person has come for. So all the experienced coaches, has this ever come up for you? Uh, Please feel free to unmute yourself and share as well anytime. Just try.
Let me just, yes, it does happen. I've been doing executive coaching for about 15 years now. And from experience, I see that their issues are quite similar. And I really have to stop myself from assuming that they are indeed similar. So one has to be conscious of this bias, which can affect our judgment. So
Yeah.
start from the beginning, find out more about the client.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that and being so mindful that, it could come across even though you have such a vast experience. And then we move on to social biases. Do let me know if I'm going fast or rushing things, because I do realize that I've been late and it's weighing on me. So, social biases basically stem from societal norms, group dynamics, and social influences. One of the main biases here is the halo effect, where you see one particular achievement of a person and you tend to think that they must be all sorted. For instance, a little away from coaching, but like Arshad Nadeem just won the Olympics medal, so there will be some people who think that whatever Arshad does now is just right because he won the Olympic medal. So we tend to generalize, take it as an umbrella concept, that if a person is doing good at one thing, or perhaps Sarah has won an award and has been promoted, has always been an A-star person professionally, but maybe she's struggling in her personal relationships. Maybe There are other parts of her life that need more attention. What is she coming to you for? So we really need to tune in and listen to the person at hand. What are their needs? And then stereotyping. Whenever I use the word stereotype, the first thought that comes to my mind is women are bad drivers. But stereotyping here can be where for instance, if we have a client who's in tech, and I get lots of clients who are especially women working in tech, and I feel that they might understand things in a bit different way, where references to digital tools like digital trackers or things like that might be beneficial for them because maybe that's how they understand. But this is my bias. Maybe that's not their comfort level. So this is my assumption. So being more mindful of biases is just making the conversation more client centric. When we operate with biases, we are making it about ourselves. We are listening to our mind chatter and we are not fully focused on the client that's there. And authority bias. So sometimes what happen is that people who are in leadership roles, like if a client comes to you and he says that, my boss or my leader, or maybe some influential personality, like Simon Sinek was saying that, and he quotes that influential person. So sometimes as coaches, we might not question that because we think that it's coming from a place of expertise, from a place of authority, so it might be right, but we have to be mindful and see that is the client applying whatever they are saying, is it relevant to their situation? Maybe what Simon Sinek said is really is right. And he does say a lot of good stuff. But is it applicable? Is it pertinent to what the client is bringing at hand? So being more aware of this authority bias that can come in sometimes can be useful in that context. Um, yes. Affective bias, that has more to do with our emotions and how our emotions affect our coaching outcomes. The one thing that happens is I'm again going to be a bit biased here, and I'm going to say that I think women coaches can have more of the empathy bias, especially if you have a client coming. Like a lot of times, I have mothers come in who are working moms or maybe housemakers. Um, and what they tell me about their children is something I can really relate to. And I totally understand that. And so my empathy and affinity towards that particular client might actually bring in this element where I think that yes, she is right, and maybe her children are wrong. And whereas maybe the child needs to be heard better. So I'm seeing it from a biased mother's lens. I'm not seeing the client as a client and the situation. How can they view it differently? What choices do they have? So I'm not encouraging them to go that route, to explore or challenging their thoughts. I'm just accepting that, being more empathetic towards, over empathetic, sometimes even sympathetic towards them. So this is not helping the client. It can be very disempowering instead of empowering because we want people to move forward. And then mood congruent bias. A lot of times you might have come from a previous coaching session, which was really exhausting and very draining. Or maybe you were, in the traffic and you're all frazzled and your emotions are not centered. So one thing that you could also do is centering and grounding yourself, neutralizing yourself. Because when we're in a bad mood, it can bias our communication, our interaction with our client. It will affect it. So are we neutral? We need to ask ourselves that. Um, And similarly, it can be the other way around when you're in a very good and in a very positive mood, or a previous session that you had with a client went really good with that client. So you're bringing in the same biased element, the good mood, and everything that's associated, the positive associations within that coaching session. Whereas today might be different, and this can make us overlook what is truly at work in that particular session. Negativity bias, this is an example I often give to our students who are enrolled in our program as well. That one of my coaches, um, like I think every session I felt that they would be continuously dwelling, going in a thought loop. The talk would be very negative, and I think it was affecting my judgment of them. Yes, we're not supposed to judge the clients, but uh, I would view things as in a negative lens, because I was unable to move past the fact that whatever they're saying is either complaining or blaming. So complaining and blaming, there are some clients who come with that. But we still have to maintain that neutrality. And I think the 81 case studies that we have to do with the worst case and best case scenarios tests us well with this negativity bias as well. Where are we letting those judgments and those biases crop in? I'd love to have feedback and thoughts from more senior coaches or newer ones as well, where they see that they might have biases coming in. Do keep sharing in the chats. We'll get to them by the end of the session. So implicit biases, while most of the biases are operating at an unconscious level, but implicit biases are specifically categorized as unconscious. Cultural bias being that, they are going on for generations. Like my grandfather had that bias, then my parents had it, I had it, and it's a generational thing. It's going on and on for generations. And in a coaching context, how it comes about is that for instance, I am in Pakistan, and I know that people in Pakistan are really suffering due to the economic and the political condition. So I might have a certain level of sympathy, or biasness towards the fact that they are suffering, and they are because I am in the same boat as them. So when we start identifying too much with the client and their sufferings, that can bring in that bias. So we have to take a step back and just zoom out, because we have to make our world bigger than theirs. As one of my lovely coaches always says, Marine, I think she's here, that we have to zoom out and make our world bigger than the coaches. And implicit gender bias again. Sorry, please don't look at the slides. I will say share some things before, however they come into my mind. So the slides are for my reference. Do listen to me though. So the implicit gender bias are more like for instance, as leaders, we think that men are more ambitious, and if they are coming to coaching, it is probably because they want more career growth. They are more assertive. And for women, we might hold this bias that they are not as assertive as leaders, and we might think that they are coming more for work-life balance instead of any other challenge or growth related challenges they might be facing in their career. So, yes, this gender bias can also come in. It does not mean that, you are a person who favors men over women, but these are implicit biases working at a very unconscious level, but they do affect our coaching conversations. So biases and the ICF core competencies, as I've given the reference of the CKAIC so many times, I will delve a bit more into that. So embodying the coaching mindset. For instance, if we have a coachee who is like a senior person, and we think that older people are not as adaptable, so we might actually not uh, challenge them a lot, thinking that they might not be open to that, whereas the reality could be that they're really open to challenges and they're really forward looking. I know people in their 70s and 80s I've coached, and they really have a growth mindset. So we can't go on with assumptions that somebody is a certain age, so they probably have limitations. As coaches, we believe that every person has immense potential, no matter what the age, what the gender, caste, color, creed. We see humans as humans, and we need to embody that as coaches. And maintaining agreement. A lot of times when we are operating with biases, the agreement gets misaligned because our agenda is a bit different than the client's agenda. We might want to use a certain technique or do certain things within a coaching session and not be aware that, or maybe ask the client what are they comfortable working with, what suits them. So the agreement part can also get misaligned if we're not um, careful of the biases filtering in, creeping in quietly, and tainting our thoughts. Cultivating trust and safety. Then again, with uh, stereotyping, for instance, or gender bias. When a male client comes to a female coach, she might think that he's not as emotional, or maybe if he cries, then you're more dismissive, because you feel that men are stoic, they need to be strong, they don't show emotion. So when you're going in with that bias, the coachee might end up feeling invalidated, because he is human by the end of the day, and as emotional as any other being. So this can affect cultivating the trust and safety element as well in a coaching conversation. And active listening. So as in confirmation bias as well, you're focused on confirming the knowledge that you already have rather than actually listening to the client. So you're not really listening to them. You're not really tuning into them. So that again, core competency 6 is affected. Um, and evoking awareness, as in with the empathy bias. For instance, if I have this mother who comes to me with her children's challenges, and I actually understand her struggles, so I might steer more comfortable levels, or make it too comfortable for her and not challenge her enough, because I feel that I understand where she's coming from. So just to make things easier for, so sometimes we really try to make things easy for our clients, whereas growth lies in a bit of discomfort, in a bit of challenge. So when we become too empathetic or go into the finity empathy bias, we're unable to actually um, ask the right questions and lead them forward. And then facilitating growth as well, when we see the halo effect, where we're overestimating the client continuously, or it could also be the other way, the negativity bias, where we're focusing on the negative part. So again, it's not helping us facilitate the client's growth, because we're either focused on the positive or we are focused on the negatives. Actually, one thing I'd like to share with you is that the reason why I actually am doing this presentation, that it has a backstory to it. I was in a peer coaching session. And I realized that the question my peer coach kept asking me was taking me to a negative frame of mind. Um, and then that sparked the thought in me that, even though we're ICF trained, she's also ICF trained. How come, I'm going into this negative thought pattern? Uh, what is with her questions that's making me do this? And I will come to that in a bit as well. That sometimes our peers, like, they're, as I shared, it's all operating at an unconscious level. And you can be trained at any level and still be indulging in these. But what causes these biases, and how are they actually working in reality? So we instinctively pay attention to certain things and eliminate certain things from a attention. And so what happens is that our memory um, is based on what we chose to pay attention to. Then our minds are extremely lazy. Those of you who have done neuroscience know that our minds are designed to save energy, to save time. So for whatever situation we have at hand, we try to look back, search back into our memory, and relate it to the present situation. So while memory as humans, it has served us and helped us evolve into such modern human beings in the technological era. And this is the main reason that animals have not evolved in a similar manner. So while our memory is a huge blessing, it can also be a curse, because we keep going back into our memory and raising. Yes. Umar, you have a question? Am I going over time?
No, 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 you're not going over time. I just had someone in the chat box had the question, so I thought once you will be slow down, I'll share that question also. Mr. Arshad Akif said that sometimes the coordinator or manager who manages the process and coach may try to influence the coach. The coach may try to influence the coach. The coachee may try to influence the coach, or coach may try to influence the coachee. What remedy we have for such a situation?
Who has asked this? Sorry, I've been looking at the
Arshad,
chat.
Mr. Arshad Akif. Arshad Saab, if
Uh,
right question that you have, if I read it well.
yes, so we influence the conversations.
Yeah, it is
S- s-
sometimes the coordinator or the manager who manages the process. What I think he's asking is that someone who is the owner or the coordinator of that coachee relationship, he or she tries to influence the coaching process.
Yes, yes, yes,
That's
definitely.
a
I
very
think
important question, in fact.
yes, that's a very good question. And recently I was coaching people in this organization say to me that, maybe all the answers that they are giving are all biased because they want to impress us, and they know that the management is hosting all the coaching sessions. And the coachees who were being coached, they did actually admit to that, is this the right answer to give, or is that the right answer to give? So cultivating trust and safety competency, for we have to tell them that this conversation is confidential. We will note the patterns, like if you have to give a report to the upper management, which you usually have to.
Mm,
So you can just tell them that um, we will give whatever patterns we see from coaching all of you, but we won't share your individual information. This is a safe space for you. And that way, if you're able to build rapport, people do understand that, they do open up. Maybe it might take a couple of sessions, but they will eventually open up. It all depends on you developing that rapport, showing them that this is a safe space and the individual stories will not be shared. The patterns or whatever is relevant to the organization, that will be shared. So be specific
uh,
about that. That's what's working. in
I think
my
this is a very important question, and what Arshad Saab has asked basically in another way also. I mean, this happens basically. Someone who is the coordinator, they maybe try to get some outcome also from that coachee relationship, and the manager or the coordinator who or the owner of that company, whatever the process they want to have it, they influence the coach to get some kind of a result also or desired result.
Yes, yes. So
Is it?
the ultimate result then that any organization wants is more sales. That's as simple as that. They want more sales. They want more productivity. They want the people to be optimized. And we as coaches, for awareness sessions, I actually reach on out one-on-one to all these HR directors, and I share with them that, um, if you want to really work on your people, they need one-on-one coaching, that ongoing support as well, because we don't know the context they're coming from. If they're catered to as a whole person, eventually the motivation levels will increase, the productivity will increase, and your sales will increase. So yes, it is a process. So coming
Yeah.
back to memory, so our brains are really lazy. We tend to go back into our heads and confirm the information that we already have or the beliefs that we already hold. Um, and this affects, so these shortcuts that our brain finds can affect our judgments and make them more biased and affect our decision making consequently negatively. Now I have this little bit of exercise here because I'm not using my laptop. I don't know if you can even see it if I try to zoom it. Um, I would like you to unmute it as well. Unmute and share with me. Some of you probably have done this before, this exercise. Do let me know what colors do you see in the picture.
Red, white, blue.
Yes, red,
Blue,
white.
green, a little bit of gray maybe in the background.
I see aqua color.
I'm sorry.
Anyone else?
Are you sharing any picture?
Yes, can you see it?
No, I can't.
Yes, there is a picture.
I can't.
So you can't see any color actually.
Yes. So I think Adnan has also done this exercise before. Was it Adnan? I couldn't see you.
Yes, my camera is off. Yes, this
Yes.
is me. But
Yes.
Umar cannot
So
see at all.
I can't see any colors.
so those of you
I'm
who
not
said red,
colorblind, by the way.
uh,
Right, but I can only read that people are seeing the pictures.
yes, so those of you who have said turquoise and black, white, so well done. You probably might have done this exercise before. Those of you who said red, so let me tell you, there is no red in this color. It is just an illusion, and this illusion is caused by our biases. The reason I chose this exercise today is to share with you how deeply etched they are in our minds. That whenever we see a can of Coke, we see the color red, even though red is not even there. So this is
Wow.
the association, the affinity, not the affinity, but the association bias that we have when it comes to seeing certain things, because our mind does not want to evaluate the picture as it is. We just want to quickly interpret it and move on and just think that it's color red because it's a Coke can.
Interesting. Yeah.
So, yes. So here I would like to share about the two thinking systems by Daniel Kahneman, who's a very popular psychologist, or I'm not sure if he's done neuroscience. So anyway, he says that system one is the system that we mostly operate in. Like every day, we make about 35 to 36,000 decisions. And we're doing it, unconsciously, like what color, what clothes to wear, what to eat, whether to overtake that car or not, whether to have that glass of water or not. So we're making decisions all the time. And those are 95% of our intuition, decisions. They are automatic. So yes, they can be biased because our mind is using those shortcuts. It needs to use those shortcuts to make those quick decisions. While if we talk about the system two, which is thinking slow as opposed to thinking fast, that is, those are decisions which just take up 5%, make up 5% of our total decisions. Those are more reflective. Like when you have to buy a house, you will think 10 times, you will do your research. When you have to move a country, you will again think. But how many decisions are there that require so much conscious attention and deliberation? So that deliberation and reflection that comes in system two. If we were to operate in this system, then we would have decision fatigue if we were to continuously operate in this system. But as coaches, this is what differentiates us. We have to think slow. We have to step back, pause, and reflect. Yes. Yes, so mitigating biases in coaching. First of all, as we all know, coaching is all about awareness, not just awareness, facilitating self-awareness in the client, but being more aware of our own selves. Reflect after each session. What went well? What could you have done differently? And if repeatedly you're not getting the outcomes, and not you, but the client is not getting the outcomes that they came to you for, it's time to reevaluate. Maybe it's your biases that are coming in the way and keeping the client from actually um, getting the results or the outcomes that they want. And also being mindful of your language. How can things be phrased differently? Yes, somebody asked something. Yes. So I think we're good on time. I'm just about to wrap up. So yes, encouraging multiple perspectives as well, challenging the client and opening them to the choices that they have. When we become biased and start seeing things from a certain lens, our focus, we become single focused too. Whereas coaching is all about choices, the choices that the client can't see themselves. But to make the client see them, are we able to bring their attention to the fact that they might not be seeing them? So being more aware of that, encouraging these multiple perspectives, and yes, thinking in the system too. And as you all know, those of you who are ICF coaches and those who might be on the pathway, that supervision is highly recommended in ICF, because a lot of times, once we're done with our mentoring, we are done with our training, we still need that kind of support. We still need to know if our clients, our clients are not getting the progress that they came to us for. We aren't satisfied with a certain way that we are coaching. So it may be dissatisfaction towards our own self as well. And there could be some biases operating at a certain level, which so yes, being more aware and using neutral language, pausing and reflecting and getting supervision. In a nutshell, we have a new message. Okay, so it's not for me. Any key takeaways that you had from today's session? Anything you'd like to share? Um, we're all open for questions. I can actually
Yes,
minimize
please.
this.
Let's have some questions if anyone has. Yes,
Yes,
Adnan.
Adnan.
Yeah, so I love the topic, and I know that unbiased coaching is really very hard to do.
Yes.
But what do you do when I heard, I think there was a question here around when the coach is trying to, when the client is trying to influence the coach. Now, my particular situation is that I come from a religious education background as well, and a lot of times people are trying to push me to give them a religious context or religious advice in terms of coaching as well. And uh, I've I though I tell people that I'm not going to bring in any of my personal background into this thing, because well, I understand all of this, but this is not for that session. However, what how do we handle situations like these? Because this is where it's it's reverse influence.
Yes, when the biases are coming from the other side, it is a challenging situation either ways. So you can just communicate to them, I guess, that this is not my domain. I don't. First of all, as a coach, I don't advise. Um, and yes, don't judge me by the demeanor and overall the fact that you do follow, you are somebody who does bring in Islamic principles as well. So I think that's an area that probably people think that they can ask you for advice and push you towards asking for such things. My question to you is, how do you think you could best handle them?
Frankly, it does trigger me, and it triggers me because of uh, the biases that other people would have around me. I mean, I don't mind the respect or whatever it is. I understand the intentions are fine, but to me, it feels like being someone with an agenda, which is my own agenda to preach my principles, which is really not in line
Hmm.
with my values.
Yes.
Um, so I typically do not handle it very well. Honestly, it becomes a trigger for me, and I tell them that, see, this is something that I'm not here for this, and also
Hmm.
because there are personal beliefs around it. Obviously, because
Hmm.
whatever religious work that I do,
Hmm.
even if I'm teaching, that's not for money at all, and there's no money involved. There's no exchange of money involved, and
Hmm.
then because a client is coming in with obviously with a paid session, then it
Hmm.
also triggers me from that perspective as well. So there are triggers around it, and that is why I'm putting up this question, because it's like coaching with an agenda, and that
Hmm.
frankly does not uh, really do well as a
Hmm.
coach. But I
Hmm.
see a lot of people online who coach with an agenda. So, for example, I am going
Hmm.
to be an Islamic coach or a Christian coach
Yes.
or whatever that is. I mean, I'm not talking about a
Hmm.
particular faith, but yes. So my question is more directed towards when the clients assume that this is how the coaching structure should be, in terms
Hmm.
of I'm going to use your values to determine my um, way forward.
Hmm.
Yasir has a
Hmm.
question, I think.
Yeah, so thank you for allowing me. But it's not really a question, but it's something that I had asked in the chat myself. That for me, being from a finance background and from a corporate background, so most of the people who do come to me come with, again, as Adnan said, with an agenda that probably they want to bounce back their career with my career, or sort of a reflection from me. And to add on to what Adnan was saying, in my experience, what I have been doing is that I make it quite clear in this before even the session itself. So I make them clear, look, this is what coaching is, and this is what a coach's role is. So are you really going to approach me for a coaching role, or are you going to approach me for a mentorship role, or do you just want to have a catharsis session with me? So I'm quite open when I start off any session or any engagement with the other person. So at least this gives them a good idea on what their target is, and somehow I have in my experiences been that they ultimately do tend to move towards coaching itself, and they realize that okay, this is the power of coaching itself, and we are the ones who have the power to sort of guide our careers or guide ourselves. So ultimately it moves towards coaching. So this is my experience, and I would also like to hear others as well, if they
My thinking,
is the same.
if you allow me, my thinking on this is that I think it happens with every coach or anyone who is mentoring. Reason being that if I'm coming from a certain background, if my experience into corporate sector or into career coaching, so I think, and I have that expertise, and Adnan has an expertise on that on religious side also, and you perhaps on finance. So a coachee may tend to ask or take us into that level also, because if that person is asking us, getting a coaching for that particular area, which is our key area, that would be a good match, in fact, I think. But on the other hand, if it is not, they are taking us for some other, asking for some other advice or help or coaching process, then they might bring us into that level where our skills are also available to them. Gee, anyone
I have
else?
a comment on this, if I may.
Maybe.
I think it's my personal opinion that subjects like politics and religion, I try to avoid those. I say I'm not an expert. I'm a coach. I have experience in coaching. I have some experience in the corporate sector. So obviously, the objective of coaching is spoken by the coach, by the coachee or their company, if it's a company coaching, and that we already know. So when they want to sidetrack, I would like to bring them back to the purpose of coaching. So otherwise, we get into complications. In fact, I remember I have a cousin who is a therapist. And when he qualified, and then he went with the doctor to do internship and so on, with the senior therapist. I remember one day he told me that the therapist said, when you go into a therapy session, leave God out of it, because he had religious leanings and he would take it towards spirituality. So the therapist said, leave God out of it and do your therapy. So that was perhaps an extreme statement. But I would try to focus on the objective for which coaching has been done, is being done. So that was something which I remember. But I have a small anecdote, if I may. It relates to bias, but not in a coaching setting. A couple of decades ago, I was the head of HR of a major bank in Pakistan. And we used to select a management training batch every year, 20 or 30 people. And the final interview phase had about 6 senior executives who were in the interview. And as a faithful head of HR, I would start off by asking people to remain objective and unbiased and so on. And we are an equal opportunity employer and so on. But one of us, the senior executive, had a history of being against employing females. And he was also kept in the panel because of a reason. So I remember that, let me come to the story. We were in the final interview, and a female from a good university, she came and she had qualified. She had passed the test. She was doing very well so far. And this executive friend of mine, he comes up with a question, despite my pleas. He says, Beta, when you join the bank and when you get married, will you continue with your service? Will you will you stay on the job? And we were all a bit shocked because we're not used to asking these questions. But the answer the lady gave actually taught him a lesson. He said, sir, let me ask you, you joined banking, I think, about 30 years ago. When you got married, did you leave your job? The executive was startled. But I think it was a great lesson for him. And afterwards, I requested him to please remain neutral. And now, as we see, all of us see, especially in banking, there are more ladies working than men. But at that time, it was on the other side. They thought that she'll get married, she'll leave the job, especially when she has children, she'll leave the job, so on and so forth. So
Great.
I used to be quite emphatic on this, create conditions that they can continue. So, well, it was a struggle, I can tell
Thank
you
you.
that.
Great, sir. Thank you very much, Mukhtar Sahab. Very quickly, just one last comment, Rafe, if you have something to say very quickly, because we are already.
Yeah, I just have a brief I just have a brief comment. So when this wonderful session was going on, I was thinking about as to when I had been like in bias in my coaching to and fro. I was trying to recall, and I really think that being unbiased, and I really admire Bakhtiar Saab's words that being objective. I got the answer from this words that you more. So that's all I would like to comment, and very good session for all. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I think we should now close it now at this point. And thank you very much, everyone, for attending, especially to Meryl from Netherlands and for joining us today. And Khadija, it was wonderful. And thank you very much for giving us this
And Daniela as well.
insight.
Daniela, yes.
It was wonderful. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming in. And inshallah, we will have our next session on 27th of September, Friday again. And every Friday, those who have joined for the first time, they should keep following us. We have a LinkedIn page also. And we post our meeting updates there. And next session will be on 27th of September, which is on Friday, and it will be on the same time. Thank you very much. So
Khadija, thank you very much.
have a good weekend.
Thank
Despite
you.
not feeling
Thank
well.
you, Bakhtiar
Get well
Saab.
soon.
Thank you, everybody,
well
for
soon.
coming.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
And muchas gracias, Daniela. Arshad Akif Saab, if you are the same Arshad Akif, welcome to this group.
Thank you, sir. I'm honored by your sentences. Thank you very much. It is really
Thank you, Arshad Saab.
amazing. And I sometime I felt all the voices mentioned over here by Khadija, perhaps in me. So it's a journey to overcome and try again and again. Thank you. So nice.
Excellent.
Thank you, Arshad
Thank you.
Saab,
Thank
for
you
coming
all
over.
for organizing.
Hafiz.
Hafiz.
Allah.
All the best.
Khuda Hafiz.